Good morning. It's a rainy day in Pittsburgh. It's a Tuesday, so we're going to do a video on refurbishing this Rockola 460 that I just got in. Some of the information will be information that was already covered in previous videos, but there were several challenges with this box that I thought would be of interest, so we're going to go over that. We're going to do it in outline format here, go over the steps that I feel are necessary to bring these boxes back to life, and then at the end we'll go over some specific problems with this box. I hope you get something out of it. It'll be about 20 minutes. I do not plug the box in when I get them. If they've been sitting for a couple years, you're going to need to go over everything, even if they do work, the components. So don't do that. If you're insistent, then at least take off the connectors that go to the fluorescent lights and also to the amplifier Molex. And then if you power it up, you're not likely to cause major trouble. But let's leave it at that. Now, I go ahead and service the casters. Now, you can see this one has the ball bearings there, and so put some oil on it and do that for all four. Replace any caster that doesn't have the ball bearings. It just makes life easier. Vacuum out the cabinet bottom. Don't be too indiscriminate here. There'll be some coins behind the coin box. Usually look for metal parts that may have dropped to the bottom. That'll give you a clue as to perhaps what was broken inside and what you may have to order. Let's just leave it at that. And now we're going to service the power supply. This big beast here that's on the back door of most of these boxes. We talked about the line, the cord, the fuses, the circuit breakers. Now this one had two bad circuit breakers, and I just wanted to show you that you can replace a circuit breaker with an inline fuse here. 1.5 amp is what I used. I believe these were 1.4 amp in the schematic. That's certainly acceptable. Now, we already did the capacitors. Don't forget this little jumper guy here. There can be a dirty connection in there. It's sort of out of sight, out of mind, but at least reseat and clean those connections there. You do the 3 electrolytic caps we talked about. The bulb, now there's a current limiting bulb that goes on after the stop relay kicks in. You'll see that flash during the selection process, but before you get to that, at least take this bulb out and be sure that its filament is good. They usually are, actually, but please check that. Now, confirm the AC and DC voltages then once you've done all this. And I have that sheet here from a previous video. So this is your mech plug, mech power here. This is what you're supposed to get. Those are the voltages. Just look at it quickly. This was on a previous video in case you missed it. Here's a selection system, what you're supposed to get. You use your multimeter, and this is the amplifier Molex. The main voltages being the 46 volts with a center tap here on the left. So do all those things. If those voltages are good, you can return the power supply to your cabinet, and we'll go on to the next step. Next, we'll go with the mechanism and record changer. Now, we've covered a lot of this before. I'm going to go through it quickly. Look for missing and broken parts. A common broken part would be the gripper assembly here. Sometimes this little appendage gets broken. Look at that. Obviously, look at the gripper bow. That's fragile. You must treat that with respect. And then there's many videos on how to free it up and make sure it brings the record out, sits it down. You want to do that with the motor removed so that you can do it by hand and get better visualization. Now, here's a good visualization of the alternating dog down below. It goes up and down with this spring to go between the record sides. Now, you must service this. It has to move, oil it till you can't oil it anymore, because it has to move completely without friction. Once you've done that, you can put it back in the track and oil the track. Very, very important. And I just wanted to show this again. Clean the circuit boards, both the write-in and the readout circuit board. Reseat the play control relay. Reseat the right-in relay and the K4 relay. Remove and clean the readout arm. We did that. Free up the gripper assembly to be sure its motion is correct. Replace turntable grommets. They're almost always brittle, and you get too much noise coming up from the turntable motor, and sometimes the turntable motor collapses down underneath because they're not being supported. So always replace the 3 of them. These are available multiple sources. Victory Glass has as good a price as any. And then check these micro switches on the back. We've talked about this, but here's a good visualization. Clean these blade contacts and be sure the connectors are in good condition. This is very important. Okay, perform any adjustments, replace the motors, plug in your mech connector, and then try to manually push a lever and see what happens. We'll do that in a second. Now I want to show you something here that was an unexpected surprise. This is not common, but if you do enough of these, you're going to find it. And sure enough, here we are missing a pin. It's 104, which the pin is here. See, there's no pin there. That's a big problem unless you just want to leave a blank in your title strip holder with no record. You can do that as a homeowner, play 79 records instead of 80, but when you're refurbishing, I had to make this right. Now, fortunately, I had another pin bank and I just swapped it in, but if you had to go in here, you work from the other side, the nuts upside, and take off all the nuts, and here's what it'll look like inside. This is the read-in arm with all the little connectors, and the readout arm, readout side is simpler, but here's where the problem is. There's a screw here that tethers these 2 rods that hold the pins in, and it'll get loose, and then this pin 104 or 193, those 2 that are right next to where the gap is, can fall off. And oh my, it's a couple hours labor. I hope none of you have to do it. I just wanted to show what the anatomy is here on the inside of this pin bank. Hopefully you'll never get to see it, but since it showed up, I thought I would mention it. Let's move on. Okay, so you put your power supply back in, and you can just simply connect the mechanism plug. You can leave the selection system and amp plugs off now, because really what you want to do, you put your motors back on, you have it in the home position, just simply manually make a selection over here. And be sure that the you know now that the plate control relay works, your wobble plate switch is working. There's no record here, we'll reach up, but you want to be sure that it sits down and has a proper motion. If it doesn't, you're going to have to make the adjustments now and lubricate, but at least you know your readout portion works. So now we're going to go on to the selector. We're going to move on to the selection system. This is the most intricate and requires a lot of cleaning and adjustments, a lot of which we've already covered. I'm going to go through this quickly and then show you some real life problems with the jukebox powered up. But the selection system consists of the keyboard, the selection control panel, which is on the back with the K6 and K7 relays. The credit unit is very important with the selection system and the contacts there. And then, of course, your connector on the bottom of the box that goes over to the pin bank and the right-in circuit board, which needs to be meticulously cleaned as with the wipers. So let's just go over this quickly. Keyboard and solenoid blade switches. Here they are, right here. This is very important to clean these and adjust right here, here, and over here, okay? The slide switches, every one of them. Again, this isn't repetitive, I know, but you want to, I put WD-40 on them and then CRC. You want to be sure they're clean and lubricated and move freely. That's very important. Then, of course, you got to replace your bulbs. This is the first make selection light and first digit light, second digit light, etc. These are 53 bulbs and 257 bulbs. They must be serviced, or you're not going to get what you need to see. Now, let's go in the selection control panel. This is very intricate, but believe it or not, the problems with this board have been relatively infrequent. Yes, the day is coming soon that these tropical fish capacitors are already starting to disintegrate. I'm not using this board, but if I were to use it, I would start replacing these because they're really at their end of life. The diodes and the SCRs still are pretty good. Clean the contacts, the group contacts on the side here. But look at this monstrosity here. And I told you why we don't plug in our box. Look what this character put in here. He put in a drill bit, and I should have known better because in the bottom of the cabinet was a drill bit kit. This is just downright dangerous. These are 1 amp fuses, and this drill bit, it probably would carry 100 amps if it needed to. Just absolutely terrible. But since you don't know what's in these boxes, this is a great example of why you use caution and before you fire up your box. Now, K6 and K7 both need to be reseated. I don't usually clean the contacts of the enclosed box relays, but they're very important in the selection process. Look at these 4 guys here. These are the standard bus connections. Now, each of these need to be taken off and reseated and cleaned because selection last digit 0, 1, 2, and 3 go through this these connectors. They're very important. 4, 5, and 6, 7 go through K7, and you may need to open this up and watch K7 contract. If you select, say, 104, you'll see this contract. The credit unit also, the ADR relay, I've talked about it many, many times. All these contacts in here must be serviced. And then, of course, on your pin bank, all these contacts. Now let's go for some real-life examples of the selection system in action. So we put everything back in, and we've got our select any single light on, meaning we have credit. So let's push the first button. You get a first digit light. Push the second button, 4. You get a second digit light, and notice the solenoid kicked in after the second digit. That's very important because now when you press the third digit, it's going to stay in because it's been blocked by that solenoid. That facilitates the third digit staying in. So let's do the third digit, 1, 4, 4, and nothing happens. What's the problem? The right-in motor should have started. Well, guess what? I forgot to put it in operate. Pretty stupid. So let's see what happens here. All right, so that was my mistake. Now suppose, I'm going to just reject this. Here a minute. Now suppose the right-in motor continued to go round and around, searching and searching. That means your right-in board is not clean enough generally. Suppose the right-in motor came to the right spot, it stopped, but nothing happened. And you didn't see this the current limiting bulb go on here in the power supply. That's a problem you've got to really research. Sometimes I reseat the stop relay, which had to kick in, or swap it out with the right-in relay. Sometimes they even take off the cover of this relay to see if it actually works. But if you see the light go on, you know the relay worked. Now you should clean those contacts anyway. But if the current limiting bulb goes on but still nothing happens, well then you have to go inside the credit unit there and be sure that you see the cancel alarm come across, and this reset arm working, that reset switch. There's a lot of things happen. Also, what has to happen at that time is the wobble plate solenoid had to kick in. It's hard to see, but it's right down there. And that's what facilitates the pin being hammered. If the pin is not hammered, then you have to go down on the bottom and reseat that gang connector I already told you about, and clean contacts. Look for loose wire. Sometimes there's a loose wire on one of the selection. It's just a detective work, but there's only about 5 things you need to check, and if you do that and clean everything, you should be good. Sometimes if the second digit does not latch, you will have a bad silicone control rectifier, and you'll ascertain that by making a different selection of the second digit. So instead of 142, make 152. It'd be unlikely 2 of them would be out. And if 152 works and 142 doesn't, then suspect one of these SCRs. Again, not too common, but things are starting to fail over the years, and you have to be vigilant. Okay, let's go on to the next section. As far as the sound system and amplifier, I've covered this a good bit in previous videos. I want to make a few additional points today. Go through and look at your needle, maybe replace it if you're scratching this. Be sure your cartridge wires are intact. Cartridge should be a Shure M44. That was the original, and it sounds really the best. The amp should have new electrolytic caps. That's pretty much standard now. Check the fuses. New op-amp ICs on the preamp board. Those are right here. Those units are causing some loss of signal, so I'm replacing them. They're only about 70 cents each. All heatsink and driver board transistors should be checked. Any tropical fish capacitor that's in the signal pathway should be replaced. And looking at the schematic, on the preamp board, you have 3 of them, C1, C6, and C9, and they are right here, here, and this big one here. Replace those. They are causing loss of signal. And also over on the driver board, the first thing you run into is C26 there. Now C26 on the driver board is right there. Okay, that has caused loss of signal in 2 out of 32 amps, so I replace that every time. Connections on the back door for both channels should be on number 4 if only jukebox speakers are used. Clean the volume control prongs and mute relay contacts, reseat it. Replace the crossover caps on both tweeters. Now in this box, they're 15 ohm non-polarized, but since I can be cheap at times, you can put 2 22 microfarad 100 volt capacitors negative to negative, and then the positive and positive will be on the outside, and that creates a non-polarized capacitor. Soldered in. It goes over the tweeters. That's to protect the tweeter from high bass frequencies, and you don't have to be exact. 15 is what's in the jukebox, but putting 2 22s back to back results in 11 microfarads. Hey, that's good enough, and it sounds good, but do something to protect your tweeters. I think it's important. The woofers should be 5 to 8 ohms, the tweeter 12 to 16 ohms. Just be sure the speakers aren't open. Now the last thing I am having trouble with, and hasn't really shown up much in the discussions about amp, is the tone control. Now the signal comes in on 12 and 13 and goes out on 11 and 14. I had bad signal coming in on 11 and good signal going out on the output. So something was wrong in this board. Well, there's not a whole lot there except slide switches, the mute circuit, and a bunch of capacitors. So I started replacing capacitors. I don't have a oscilloscope to facilitate checking where this distortion is entering or leaving, but it turned out, I believe, that this slide switch is bad, and you can sort of tell that this insulation is sliding forward. It doesn't happen on the others, so just be aware that these slide switches are troublemakers. Put some WD-40 on them lubricate them a little bit, then clean them off with CRC, exercise them a couple times just to be sure they're not in the same position. But I'm just saying these are additional problems that are developing that have to be paid attention to. Okay, that's about it for the amp. Thanks. I wanted to say a couple words about the cabinet. Now, Facebook can be misleading at times, and this seller had this box for sale. It looked very nice, and I offered a certain amount and went out there, and sure enough, both glass pieces are broken, and that was an unpleasant surprise. So I was able to negotiate a more reasonable price. If you run into this, you're probably going to have to get decals from Europe. Jukebox Decor is from Greece. That's Takis Zigoratis. And Jukebox Revival is from the Netherlands. Both of them have decals. The reason is these boxes are worth about 2 to 3 times as much in Europe, so it's cost effective for them to have decals made to bring these boxes back. Over here, up till now, you could often salvage a glass off a junker machine, but now the machines, the ones that are junked because all the glasses are broken. So those two folks' outfits have been a real lifesaver for me. I'm waiting on the glass pieces, and as soon as they come in, I'm waiting on the decals. When they come in, I'll get this box on the market. Now, the one problem with Rockolas, and everyone says, is the cabinets can be difficult to maintain. They're particle board, and if you let this chain go and let the front door flop down, it's going to torque off the 2 hinges down there. And that's what happened when I got this box. That was another reason I offered less for it. Both of those pieces were, chewed off. So I know it's not very pretty, but I was able to glue the 2 pieces back on, then re-screw them on, and then I just threw some Bondo over top of it. And it doesn't look very nice, but it's inside, out of sight, and it's solid. So I have salvaged this door. So I just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, the cabinets are usually pretty good in these machines. Just the front doors that get ravaged. Oh yes, there's another piece on the bottom that I was missing, and I was able, with a L-shaped aluminum bar, to form it in a little more narrow angle so I could put it over the bottom, and then I put some screw holes in it, and I made a very acceptable bottom, they call it an extrusion piece. Sometimes you just got to wing it. I forgot one thing. When you check the fluorescent light ballast, I know this is not a big deal, but this looks certainly to be an asbestos pad, so I really don't feel like removing this ballast and checking it. I don't really want to disturb the asbestos sheet that it's on. So what you do, you go to the plug that's coming out of the power supply, the black wire, and you put one end of your multimeter there, and then you go up here to where it connects to the top, and it's not black there, it's actually like a blue. Put the other end there, and that should give you the ohms reading across the ballast without messing with that. I know it's not a big deal, but if you don't have to mess with asbestos, I would just soon not. So that's pretty much the final issue I have with the cabinet. Well, I hope you got something out of this to keep for your next project. I'm not sure what my next box will be. I'm hoping to get a 440 or another 437 in, and when I do, and if I encounter some issues that I think are of value, I'll certainly post another video. Till then, thanks again for watching. Have a nice day.